Hello, and welcome to Flying Failures, where we'll be looking at the SPAD S.A. The SPAD S.A. has gone down in aviation history as one of the strangest and most terrifying aircraft designs, one that was very costly in both navigators and pilots for the fact that the very operation of the aircraft put the crew in danger, as well as being sluggish, unreliable, and easy prey for superior adversaries. In the early years of military aviation, a continuing bugbear surrounding the ability to combat enemy fighters was for the aircraft's machine guns to fire through the radial arc of the propeller, with many designs resolving this issue through the mounting of the gunner's position behind the pilot to allow for a near unobstructed 180-degree field of view, but had the obvious disadvantage of not allowing the gunner to fire forward. Although timing links were eventually developed between nose-mounted machine guns and the radial arc of the propellers, by 1915 such a concept was still in development, and therefore the solution was to mount the observer or gunner ahead of the engine. While the French aircraft manufacturer SPAD, or the Société pour l'Aviation et ses Dérivés, created their own version of the design, the concept wasn't a new one, as it had been pioneered on the British Royal Aircraft Factory BE-9 of August 1915, but it was quickly apparent on the British design that the idea of fitting the observer or gunner position ahead of the engine caused no end of problems, and thus the BE-9 never went beyond a single prototype. SPAD, however, were willing to expend large amounts of time and money into developing the S.A, and brought forward their design in the form of the A1 prototype, this aircraft being the brainchild of Louis Bechereau, and was the first aircraft produced by SPAD following its reorganization from the pre-war Dépôt-Dusson company, taking many features from Bechereau's previous ventures in successful monocoque racing monoplanes. From the start, the S.A was designed to place the observer ahead of the propeller in a streamlined pod, known as the pulpit, allowing them a clear view to the front and sides without a drag penalty, but its hasty conversion for use by gunners was more of an afterthought, as it was fitted with lightweight machine guns that were of inferior firing speed and quality to those used on contemporary single-seat or rear-gunner fighters. Problems rapidly arose, though, the first being a lack of communication available between the pilot and the observer, as due to there being no way of fitting some kind of early intercom, the ability of the observer to inform the pilot of enemy aircraft or ground units was reduced to either screaming or waving their arms around in an esoteric fashion, thus resulting in many S.A fighters falling victim to enemy attacks due to the observer being unable to tell the pilot about the incoming danger. The pulpit, meanwhile, was attached to the airframe through a flexible tubular mount incorporated into the propeller driveshaft, while its design included air intakes on its sides and underside to redirect air towards the 80-horsepower Lejeune rotary engine, which was otherwise masked by the nacelle, but this engine was underpowered for the aircraft's role as a fighter, and thus left it vulnerable to assault, while attempts to up the power to 110 horsepower with the SPAD S.A. caused consistent overheating. With the propeller spinning at 12,000 RPM only inches from the observer, a small mesh screen was fitted to prevent any accidental strikes, but this in no way decreased the precarious position of the pulpit's occupant, as aside from the pervasive fear of being struck by the spinning blade immediately behind, it was also very exposed, making it easy prey for enemy units. Furthermore, the building materials used in the tubular mount were inconsistent in their quality, therefore it wasn't uncommon for the pod to part company with the plane, causing the observer to tumble to his death below. What's more, in the event of even a minor crash, the observer would be crushed, especially in the case of a nose-over incident often experienced on primitive biplanes. In the service of the Armée de l'Air Français, or French Air Force, the SPAD S.A was quickly seen for its faults, and served a very short career, being replaced by more capable and infinitely less dangerous fighter aircraft by 1917, with only 42 SPAD S.A.2 airframes being delivered, but not enough to form a complete fighter unit, or escadrille. Strangely, the Imperial Russian Air Service took on several S.A.2 and S.A.4 aircraft to fill holes in their diminished fleet, with 57 units being delivered overall, while Russian models differed through the fitting of skis for winter use, and had minor structural differences to the top wing, incorporating a separate center section rather than each wing panel being joined along the center line. Regardless, Russian crews thought even less of the SPAD than the French, potentially another reason why dissent was rampant among the ranks of the Tsar's armed forces, but it was in the service of the Russians that on November 25, 1916, one S.A, piloted by Russian pilot Karpov and his gunner Bratolyubov Yurij Alexandrovich, shot down a German aircraft near the village of Vulka on the Eastern Front, perhaps the only brief, shining moment in this aircraft's short and inauspicious career. Otherwise, the SPAD has been largely forgotten by history, with the last examples known to have existed in Soviet use during the Russian Civil War until around 1920. The one enduring legacy of the S.A.'s calamitous failure, though, is that it did help to give Bechereau and his team experience in developing a far more successful fighter aircraft, the S-7, a direct descendant of the S.A., and one that improved the design by removing the pulpit, fitting a delta-shaped tailplane, having a fuselage fitted with additional fairing stringers, and being propelled by an infinitely more powerful Hispanos Theta V8, making it the weapon of choice for many World War I flying aces, including Georges Guinemer of France, Francesco Baracca of Italy, and Alexander Pentland of Australia. Otherwise, the SPAD S.A. is a design that has been lost to the pages of history, an attempt to shortcut technological problems that ultimately ended in chaos.